You're listening to White Noise with your host, Drip, 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 Drip.
White Noise, Year 2, Episode 2. We're back. As always, I'm your host, Drip, aka Davis, aka J White Boy of BRP, Vanilla King, Certified Sad Boy, Sensitive Older Boy, all that. You know what it is if you watch Black Wrestling Proper every Thursday night live on YouTube. And joined by Khal, producer Khal, founder of Black Wrestling. We're on the way to celebrating year 6666.
That's nuts. That's
Black
nuts.
Wrestling. And stuff that happens going into 6 years of content, you get to build an empire like we've been trying to do here.
That's interesting.
And White Noise is part of that empire, just like something else is, just like Black Watch, just like Black Reaction or Wrestling Podcast Club, Coffee and Kicks, whatever else, Fools in a China Shop, whatever else may be on the horizon that is happening right now. And the unfortunate part of an empire is like something, particularly in this show, is you have to go along with whatever I'm interested in, and that is the works of Nick Winding Refn or Taylor Sheridan or a bunch of other things. We got a bunch of movie news to talk about too. This is going to be a pop culture / like you said, we're going Hollywood this week. Last week we did Wrestle Kingdom 17 with Banks.
Big Hollywood.
We recapped that entire show. And now we're going to pop culture side of things. As anyone's known in the past, we've talked about Ray Liotta and his role in Goodfellas during his untimely and unfortunate passing last year. We did Gray Man talk, the Gray Man, I should say.
The Gray Man.
Along with some other things we talked about, Uncharted, Bullet Train, Nope, a little bit. So we've kind of mixed in some movies, film, cinema, all three of those parts. We've talked pop culture along with some wrestling talk over the course of this show. So anyone who's a fan of TV shows no one watches, I think.
Facts. Yeah, I forgot I didn't realize he was the one that did Too Old to Die Young, which I want to watch, but I've never watched.
So let's get started, really. So Nicholas Winding Refn, he's Danish. He did this trilogy called Pusher. I've never seen any of those, but Mads Mikkelsen was the star of those films. He's a big deal in Hollywood now. Been a fan of his. Then he did Bronson, which is Tom Hardy's breakout. That's what got Tom Hardy Inception and then Dark Knight Rises, and that's what allowed his career to take off. I've seen Bronson, very weird film, but it shows how Tom Hardy is the star he is, where like he has this brutish, muscular body, but like this comedic timing and sense of drama and serious acting. It's a real tour de force by Tom Hardy. And then he does Drive, which is like a sacred text of white noise. One day I think we'll do like the white noise like Hall of Fame, where like what are the pillars of white noise.
That sounds awkward.
But Drive is, as we talked about again with the Gray Man and Ryan Gosling's role in that, it goes in part with Nicholas Winding Refn. I think what I was reading up on the other day, he had chosen Nicholas Winding Refn to be the director of that film. They return 2 years later and collaborate again on Only God Forgives, which is a good movie to look at, like most Nicholas Winding Refn projects. Like, he has a sense of style. He's a great visual storyteller. He might not be able to tell a story with a script. I would say he's poor man Denis Villeneuve, or like Denis Villeneuve's like, give me a script and I can execute it, whether there's something or nothing here. I think Nicholas Winding Refn's like the opposite of that.
Word. No, facts.
While being a fan, I haven't seen The Neon Demon. That's the thing. I haven't seen that.
I did not want to see that, and that may be on Netflix. At least it was on Netflix.
It's on Amazon. It's an Amazon film, which I think that's what got him his the first TV show he's ever done, which is Too Old to Die Young. He collaborated with Ed Brubaker, the man who created the character the Winter Soldier in Marvel Comics. So they teamed up for this show, and if I could describe that, it was 10 episodes, 13 hours long. Some ranged from half an hour to an hour 30 minutes. It was Miles Teller was a LA sheriff, but it was darker than that. He was basically a pederast as well. He was dating an underage woman. He was responsible for this hit gone wrong. There was this whole drug cartel part. there's this woman who's like this Angel of Death character, which I think is what had his attention the most and why he wanted to do Copenhagen Cowboy. John Hawkes is this one-eyed hitman who then teaches Miles Teller how to become a hitman on the side. And it's all about LA and the depravity of man and the world and all of it. And that's the thing when you watch something by Nicholas Winding Refn is like how depraved man can be. And I'm like, every time I watch something by him, I'm like, am I like into this because of that, or am I into this because of the obvious, like Drive, like Ryan Gosling stomping the dude's head in,
right?
Only God Forgives. There's like this cop in Thailand who like seeks out his own brand of justice, even though he's a cop. He's still willing. It's like a cop without the rules. And there's this amazing part in Too Old to Die Young where Miles Teller is sent to kill these two brothers. He kills one, and then there's this whole long chase set to Barry Manilow's Mandy, and the guy's chasing him or in an electric car, and it dies out in the middle of the desert. And then Miles Teller sees that, hits reverse, and like crashes into their car. It's weird. It's like his way of telling stories, and he's one of the few auteurs in terms of, like, I think it's singular. His vision is singular. It's a lot of, again, neon, these bright red lights, these bright blue lights. I think that goes to I think one time said he was colorblind, or like that's what really can capture his attention visually, is to see something clearly is to have neon lights. And
it's just that he's colorblind.
Something. He's an interesting guy. And that's how we get Copenhagen Cowboy. I think I said we talked about it a few months ago on the show that this was going to be a Netflix show, and more often than not, I don't check out Netflix shows. Yeah, so so what he'll do is he'll do hashtag by NWR, which is by Nicholas Winding Refn. So like the one,
I think
on the
that's
left.
his company, right? I think that's the name of his actual like production company or whatever.
But before every episode of Too Old to Die Young, that logo would play on the left, and now before every episode of Copenhagen Cowboy, that logo on the right plays.
Yeah, it was that shit. I didn't know what I had. Again, I had to Google to know what the hell I was looking at. I didn't know if that was just like him being like, "Hey, I'm not going to write my name. This is my little like infamous scroll of me."
It's his version of like a Spike Lee joint, like a way to like to have his own stamp. But like you said, it's weird because Copenhagen Cowboy, it's like I think they gave him little to no money for this show, which is why the title cards look like someone's drawn with a telestrator.
He used that money though. That money wasn't just sitting on the steps.
But I mean, for like no big title card or entry. And this is Netflix. Nah. They care about international TV just as much as they do Stranger Things. Like,
right.
A whole bunch of Netflix shows are like Squid Game, Money Heist. They've been trying to go international with their shows more than.
But it's also good to like not spend money. Like,
yeah,
if you can get a dope show and it's like $8, that's really all they care about, I guess.
Well, I think Nicholas Winding Refn doesn't care about having the money if he can have his vision. Again, like being an auteur, as we'll get to Francis Ford Coppola a little bit later, is sometimes they won't give you the money, so you'll have to give yourself the money to make it your way, because that's the only way it can be made. I think Nicholas Winding Refn.
That was Spike Lee. That's how Malcolm X got, and like a lot of them shits got made. Robert Townsend. That's how Robert Townsend made Hollywood Shuffle.
Do you believe in that? In terms of like doing what it takes to make it on your own instead of like playing by their game?
I mean, that's kind of
we've been talking about this the last couple of weeks, to be honest.
That's kind of the black rat. Again, Drip, I'm the person who mind, and I know I have to get, I don't even have all of the files because I was uploading. All right. I'm sorry, Drip. This is an off-white detour. When I was working at a shitty job, I would listen to a lot of podcasts, right? And I was like, damn, this is cool, but I could do this. You know what I'm saying? Like, I read the same stuff. I have the same conversations with myself and come up to the same conclusions that a Meltzer or some of these other people have. I've listened to a lot of Observer Radio. And I said, at the time, Black Wrestling was blackwrestling.blogspot.com, I think. or it was a subsidiary of Rock. It may have been blackwrestling.rockthedub.com because I wanted to stop posting pro wrestling on the site where I was posting hip hop and all types of other stuff. I was at that point I was doing Sopranos reviews, I was doing Lost reviews, I was doing hip hop. There was some drum and bass, and then I was posting like Botchamanias. And I'm like, I can't. It doesn't make any sense. Let me put that to where it needs to go. And I was doing a lot of writing, but I got a job where I was doing too much stuff to where I couldn't write. So I said, let me try a podcast. I would take my fucking BlackBerry and the little headphones that came with it. I would I would go to Wrestling8.com, WrestleView, all the wrestling sites. I would print out my little shits. I would go to the dumpster. It was like right by the little parking lot, and I would 10 minutes. Boom, here's a segment 1. Go back in, come back out on lunch, maybe do like segment 2 if it was a pay-per-view review. Literally walking with recording into a phone.
So do you remember in Girls Trip when she's like the Black Huffington Post? Like that's what they were supposed to do. Were you trying to do Black Fightful?
It was more legit. It was the most produced thing I've ever done in terms of like I would record an intro. I would record I was reviewing Raw. It would be like a Raw recap. I would get into it was usually news heavy, so it would be the intro, Raw recap, news, and then at the end, if there was like a pay-per-view coming up, I would do predictions or something random, do an outro, and then this is again, I'm recording all of this in snippets on like a Tuesday and a Wednesday because I would drop the episodes like a Thursday. So I would take all of that audio recorded on my BlackBerry.
As I was saying, on the Drake BlackBerry.
Mind you, the BlackBerry, it didn't record things in MP3 for a while, so I had to convert them to MP3, take them into a sound editing thing, and it was like, all right, what are the 2 or 3 rap songs that I like this week? Because again, I didn't have the brain to put this up on Apple Music or whatever the Apple Pocket, whatever the shit was at the time. I was uploading to a site called Hulkshare because you could download it, you get an embed link, and you could put that in the post, and people could click it and listen to it right then and there. They didn't have to go nowhere if they wanted to. But I would take the snippets of audio of me talking. I would have instrumentals just like this underneath it playing because it sounded like shit. Again, it was a little BlackBerry microphone. And then in between the segments, it was like if it was a new Action Bronson song, you're going to hear that new Action Bronson song or like whatever Wu-Tang song I like. So you would get maybe like 4 or 5 rap songs with like 4 or 5 segments of Michael Apple knows. Shouts to Michael Apple. He was back then. That's how long, some of these people have been on this. And I was doing that. I may have done 50. I only stopped when I started working at Complex. I didn't have enough time to I knew because my dumb ass, I didn't have time at home to record, and I knew I wasn't going to be able to do this in New York in the streets on like 24th Street in New York. I would look like a crazy person ranting to myself about pro wrestling with all this noise going on. It was already bad enough. So that's when I put it on hold, and you figure that was 2012. We came back in 2017, so it was like 4 years that I wasn't doing it, and it wasn't until Fam hit me in 2016, and we started right around this time. We were figuring out what made the most sense. But yeah, I did that for maybe like a year, and it's gone from that to talking to Drip about fucking whatever. What's Nicholas Whining Ruffin?
Ruffin, yeah.
Ruffin? Jesus Christ. Copenhagen Cowboy.
And that's, we get here. And as we watch the trailer on the Patreon, so if you're not paying the 1 or the 10, if you're watching this on YouTube, look up the trailer yourself, see if it's worth your interest. I won't spoil too much of the show. It's only 6 episodes. There's not really much to spoil aside from like, if you're not interested in, again, like I said, the depravity of man, but also like into justice in terms of like someone doing good because they maybe are like a Christ-like figure, like the
Right.
character Miyu is, where she's supposed to be this lucky coin of sorts. I mean, the first episode you watched, and what did you think?
All right, so it starts. That there's a if you watch the trailer, there's I'm gonna spoil it because I don't care.
There's a bunch of pigs.
The fucking pigs, yo. Every
And
time,
I think the thing about Nick Winding Refn too is he's too obvious. Like there's no
yeah.
subtlety, and it's been the criticism of him. Like he's just out there. Like get it, men are pigs. Ha ha.
It was so every time this lady's husband was on screen, he didn't speak, but every time he made
a noise
action, it was a grunt. You would hear the grunting of a pig,
or a squeal,
a squealing of a pig. But like, and again, I knew the show was Danish. I didn't know how much of the show was in English. So not only did I have the subtitles on, but I did like I did with Squid Game, which was a show that people were talking about, and I didn't really want to watch. So I put it on 1.5 speed just to kind of get through it as fast as I could. So
I had the English dub on, so like they're talking in English.
Well, that was the thing.
It's also subtitled as well, so.
Exactly. Now, again, there was a lot going on, but there's one point in there where like the dude calls him a pig while the squealing goes. It's like, so here's the point that, and he wasn't even like he was a shitty guy, but like he's like low key like the least shitty of the guys that we saw.
Because the guy doing this is a guy who runs a brothel, and that's the thing. It's with Nick Winding Refn. It's like you get the deepest, dirtiest, darkest parts of like the underworld. Like if you watch Joel Did I Young, like I said, like Miles Teller's a cop who has to work for a drug dealer, but there's this whole side story that's a good part of that show where they show how a hit gets passed around. Like there's a guy who gets tasked like, hey, I need this guy killed. He doesn't want to do it, so he gives it to someone else. That guy doesn't want to do it, so he gives it to some random junkie, and this junkie kills the wrong person, and it creates a whole chaos. And that part, like crime, is interesting. And someone like Nick Winding Refn, who's influenced by like I think Hong Kong action cinema, French New Wave, American comedy, because like there's this like the things people will talk about on the show.
What comedians?
He says like Clerks is one of his favorite movies, and there's like as you get later into the show, you like there's this character.
I can see that.
There's this blonde Danish guy who looks like the stereotypical like European man with Fabio type hair, and he talks about like his dick, and it's just like what the fuck? He's like it's the greatest gift one can have is a dick, and it's just like what's this about? And
well, I mean, it's funny you mentioned Spike Lee. I mean, I've not seen too many. I've watched. I need to actually. I'm good. I told myself I need to restart Twin Peaks. I've seen shows that are like intentionally like. I've watched Atlanta. They're specifically peculiar.
I would say David Lynch is someone who's probably influenced Nick Winding Refn as well.
Copenhagen Cowboy, the dude that runs the brothel. I mean, he has a commercial on TV. He's promoting a modeling service that realistically, if you want to keep it a buck drip, and this is probably I'm not putting his name in the tags or anything like that, but that dude is like Andrew Tate.
Yeah, no, it's
that's
the whole thing. The whole thing is like I think he wants to speak on like how again men are sick in terms of like the occupations they'll have, and like this brothel service is disguised as one thing, and there's the whole even like the old woman who wants to have a child, but like she's too old to have a child out, but she also she houses the women in the brothel, and there's a whole like
she said
she's basically like the evil stepmother of like these brothel workers, and
it sucks. It's so it's one of those things like I get it, and that stuff is really depressing, but it's like
it's basically about like human trafficking, like you just said, like that's the whole point of
the whole thing,
and it makes me think like again like why would I be interested in this except by the guy who gave you Drive, and I'm like, well, yeah, I'll watch it. Like he gave us Drive. Even though, again, as much as I did like Told It I Am, like I said, there are parts where like, what is wrong with me for even watching this, and what's wrong with him for creating this? But there's that thing too. Like I think we do like the underworld, and the last 3 episodes 4, 5, and 6 are extremely better than the first 3. It gets into that like there's some action, there gets some like you can see the influence of like brick crime. She starts to pick up. She gets involved with this guy who used to like own her prior.
There's like a whole like Japanese aspect to it as well.
Yeah,
right?
that's what I think it's almost like real life anime for like the last 3 episodes too. Like there's this villain figure who gets, I won't say how, but like he gets ripped apart, and he wears like this outfit that's very like anime-esque, and like he revives someone to life, and it's like Alex, who's the supernatural exists in this world, and Miyu herself says in one episode that she's an alien. She has these magical powers, and they actually come to existence in some episodes, and it's just like this thing, like I don't know what to think. Let me read you. So Too Old to Die Young, like I said, it was his prior show.
That hit Amazon. That was like 2018,
2019,
2019,
yeah.
I
I
mean,
watched all of it one weekend.
Well, I heard my homie, he'll watch some shit that like may kind of not be the best story if it's like visually striking. He's really into like that.
Yeah,
like,
and that's why, and to be honest, that's why I'm into. There are a lot of like, he'll always have a still frame, and I always respect like a camera that doesn't shake chaotically.
Right.
It's just like a clear framing of like shot reverse shot, or like he does a lot of like panning.
There's one great shot in that first episode.
That's his typical thing. Again, I think it's like very Stanley Kubrick influenced. As much as like Kubrick. As someone who I think respects visual style, but wants to like, it's not a painting, but it can at the right time look like a painting once. Once everything hits its spot. Like once I'm just moving this camera around, and then all of a sudden the character walks into frame at the exact same time it should meet.
Well,
so like he's fixated on telling a visual story more than a story.
There's a bit where Miyu goes, when she finally goes into the basement for the first time where all the girls are, and she comes down the steps, and you're following her down the steps, but once she stands and it starts panning, you start to see who she's seeing, and like you see the one girl sitting at the table, and then it pans over and you see the other girls kind of come into the frame, and like as they're having their conversation, I believe the camera's panning back and forth, and then it starts to do that 360 pan again as she's leaving. So like it starts to pan looking at the girls, and by the time it goes back to where it started, you're seeing her already like at the top of the steps. There's really ill shots. There's also really just because I still don't know if the girl actually had supernatural powers. It was also kind of, the first episode was like mad predictable, although I did like it did the I don't know if every episode did it, but it did the thing where like, fuck, do I even mention this?
Good.
I don't want to say the show already came out. Yeah. All right. So
no one is literally watching the show except for me and some of your Ringer colleagues and
I won't
true
say
NWR diehards.
I won't say what happened, but I'll say this. The show starts with a fairly disturbing scene out of nowhere. You get this really twisted, kind of supernatural, very fucked up, like underworld of this brothel that leads you to where I want to say, was it the first episode of Watchmen? There was some show that did this as well, where like you have something at the beginning that you don't know what the fuck it is. They tell the story, and by the end of the episode, you're like, oh shit, this is what's going on. I liked that element of this. It was a really fucked up thing that was going on. It was really confusing because where did this person come from? What does this have to do with anything? Why did she lie?
Mm-hmm.
Why did she lie? She did the, oh well, I guess I'm going. Why lie? I don't know. But it was so predictable. By the time the car came up, I'm like, oh yeah, she ain't even. And I figured some wild shit was going to happen. I didn't realize it was going to be that scene.
Yeah. And
then of course, the fucking pig squealing. I don't know, man. I was kind of like, when it ended, I was like, what the fuck Drake brought me watching, bro?
That's as soon as I said last week that we were going to be watching it this coming week, I'm like, oh god, whatever.
He said you don't have to watch anything other than the first episode.
Well, I was like, I know this show is going to start off bad, but I'm like, is it going to deliver what I expect from Nick Wayne Ruffin, which is like, and there are some good fight scenes in the latter 3 episodes. In the first 3, it picks up on like the what he actually should do. And I think that's why I'm like, is this guy a finesser, or does he need someone? And no, just again, like the guy who made Drive, you expect neon lights, Ryan Gosling kicking ass,
Right.
just a great score. There's a great score through the entire series. Cliff Martinez scores all his projects, and it's amazing.
I'm gonna say it now, Drip. I know where you. I see what you're doing right now, Drip. Keep going. Keep going.
No, I mean, like, I think someone should tell him, like, hey, here's what you need to focus on. Don't, who cares about like the French New Wave and like random conversations of people? Just do, again, this woman who's an avenging angel,
right,
seeking righteous against those who have wronged her, which that was one of the best parts of Too Old to Die Young. There was this Hispanic woman who was like the high priestess of death. She worked for this cartel, but the whole time she was kind of secretly working against it. She would like avenge like the murders of innocents against cartel leaders, corrupt cops, all of it, and it while being like the lover caretaker to this aging cartel and helping his successor come along.
Okay.
And I think that's what fascinated Nick Weinhofen of that story. Then like spin off like, well, I can take this type of story of like a woman seeking out justice in Denmark, which then somehow also has a Hong Kong crime family story in the middle of it, which is like, I guess there are people of Chinese descent in Denmark. Who knows? Maybe it is a cultural melting pot. And
maybe,
and I think to like create a more interesting show, the dubbing, like there's when it gets to like the crime aspect of like the underworld and like drug dealing. At first, they're Serbian or like a Balkan descent. Then there are these guys who clearly look like they're still Danish but have British accents because it's dubbed. And if you want to tell like a more enthralling story and all that, and like it's hard to say stick with it through those first three because it is like, oh, again, like what do I really want to watch a show about, again, how we treat women in cruelty of like they work in brothels or they're sex trafficked, but then this one is the ultimate badass where she can bring people to life and then kick their ass at the same time because she's undersized. She's wearing, like, if you put up the image, it's like this woman who kind of has like this boyish haircut where like she looks like
this is
like
his daughter.
No,
her.
Yeah. But she looks like the Legend of Billie Jean, or like how most women in the 80s looked like that.
She's like a fucking little boy, yo. She like
that's the thing, too. That's what they say. Like when they try to sell her to the brothel, they're like, no one's gonna want to be for. She looks like a boy. Like
she got like in the tracksuit with the whole turtleneck or the neck up. Like, come on. But I'll say this. Normally, the way things have gone these days, I guess, and when I say these days, I'm strictly talking in the streaming service battle era of the last 3 years. There's an idea. If the idea is loose enough to not be restrained to 2 to 2.5 hours, they'll turn it into
a series, a limited series,
8 episodes. The Copenhagen Cowboy could have been an hour and 50 minutes. You could have had that first episode. He could have found, as drawn out as a lot of that stuff was, he could have shortened that. NWR could have made that whole first episode 10 fucking minutes. You could have took the meat of that shit, put it right in there for like
this
that
old woman wants to have a child. She buys another woman who is supposed to be this lucky charm. It doesn't work out right away. She sells her to her brother, who's again a brothel runner. But secretly she falls in love with another woman at the brothel who then is murdered. She wants to avenge that murder, and now is the ramifications of avenging that murder then spins out. And that's what I mean. We're like, well, because this is also supposed to be a TV versus film debate too. Because someone like NWR was supposed to be, I think, like Hollywood's next auteur. Like Drive was a huge success. Only God Forgives was a flop in every sense, critically, commercially. Even though I think it's a thing that's come around where actually there's more to this film than meets the eye. Because people like to either revive things that are trash to be like, no, this is secretly good, or just like to praise things that are bad to be like different. There are some aspects of it that are interesting, but there's this interesting documentary. Again, playing a Francis Ford Coppola, but like, because Francis Ford Coppola made Apocalypse Now, famously one of the most doomed productions in the history of filmmaking. The whole time, his wife was filming a documentary called Hearts of Darkness, which was documenting him making this movie and his struggles with that. So Nicholas Winding Refn's wife, over the course of Only God Forgives, is documenting him making that movie. And I don't know if this is him trying to do it on purpose or like, is this him trying to be meta? Like, this is my apocalypse now.
Well, like you mentioned,
and I need my wife something to do, but like there's a scene in the trailer where like I have like this image, I forgot to send it, but like Nicholas Winding Refn is looking at like a storyboard wall, and he's like, I don't know if the storyline between Ryan Gosling and the woman makes any sense. Like, and this is while he's making the movie, and he's someone who famously likes to film his movies in chronological order. Just as it makes me get a sense of like where the story is going. Once I did it the first time, I can never go back because like I'm focused on moving on to the next scene because I know what to prepare for instead of like going back and fixing something that now doesn't work. Which is the opposite of someone like Chris McQuarrie, who we talked about in Mission Impossible, is someone like, I've already filmed this scene. Now I'm onto a scene that takes place 20 minutes before. How do I get to what I just filmed? And that chaotic style filmmaking is why those movies are a masterpiece. And once you figure out what goes behind Mission Impossible is just as interesting as the movie itself.
Wait, Trip, have you ever done there's a series, I forget the name of the channel on YouTube, but I'll find it. He does like multiple like behind the scenes videos about classic films. I randomly catch the episodes that he does on he did on Full Metal Jacket. And I was listening to one literally a couple of hours before we started recording today, and they were talking about how, and I guess it's easier because it's a war film, but Kubrick didn't have an ending for the film.
Yeah, which is why it just ends with like that random murder and him looking up like, again, like what's the whole point of like war is hell? Get it?
Right.
Even though I'm not saying Kubrick's degrading himself to that, but again, it was him finally coming to grips like, I got to make a modern war movie and get like that war turns innocent men or men with good hearts into monsters, and that's what we'll get into TV debate and why the whole point of TV post Sopranos is, am I a good man or am I not a good man? Like,
there you go. Well,
but look at that. But with someone like you said it perfectly, like Copenhagen Cowboy could have been the best story, I think, if he focused on the last 3 hours instead of the first 3 hours.
Right.
But since someone like him is an auteur, where it's like his vision and only his vision, I don't think he's someone who could parachute in and direct like John Wick 4 if Chad Stahelski stepped out. Like, could you imagine John Wick just going around Amsterdam being like, well, what's going on?
But
and
wait,
someone's like, we're smoking weed.
But the thing is, Drip, like what he could do, and this is the beauty of television. This is why especially if it shows on fire, I mean, like Breaking Bad, like just one season, every episode is moving towards a certain goal, and they're always, moving at top speed. If you have I could see Nicholas Winding Refn doing an episode of the Continental Show for the John Wick. You know what I'm saying? And that episode is like, fucking whoever's going to, some Neo-Japan-esque area, and it's a lot of wild fights and not a lot of, maybe the dude's mute. And it's his origin story. It's this wild story about Rome. Like,
he made a movie where Mads Mikkelsen was a mute Viking who. I haven't seen it. It's called Valhalla Rising. But if you watch the trailer, it's like Mads Mikkelsen's a mute who like decapitates dudes in the fucking AD like the AD time period of like the Crusades are going on.
What was the name of that? My one Nicolas Cage interview.
That like movie he did about like feudal Japan, right?
Prisoners of the Ghostland. If you see that movie is bugged out. I mean, the shouts at, what did Nicolas Cage call it? Oh fuck.
Well, I think it's like a type of movie where
there was a way that he described he when he talked about because again he's the guy who's literally been acting since 1981. He just says, I'm trying to give you something unique because he has to stay interested. That's why, that's one of the reasons why
he's doing it for the money. He's doing it for like, all right, I don't want to keep doing the same role. He's not going to be Liam Neeson.
Exactly.
Like,
I forget the way he what was there was something that the way he referred to his acting style. It wasn't. Fuck, I forget the name because he looks at acting a little different, and I could see him and Nicholas Winding Refn.
No, I think that would be a good collaboration between the funny thing about Too Old to Die Young, which I had brought up, but I didn't get to say what it was. The genre of that show. Because what would you say The Sopranos was, like a crime drama or a family drama? right?
Crime drama makes sense. Crime
So
drama is
here's
definitely it.
according to Too Old to Die Young's Wikipedia page, here's its genre: neo noir, crime drama, neo western, satire, thriller, urban fantasy, surrealism. And
I
that's
mean,
what I mean. Like he's this guy who's like, I got all these ideas. I can't just tell a single story of like
it fits.
dirty cop who now has to become a hitman to pay his debts. Like that's the better story than Miles Teller being a pederast and
It fits, but it's also kind of like at some
basic.
point,
Yeah, I know what you. Yeah,
but it also kind of looks like, hey, if I can put this one idea that I have randomly in this series, I can throw noir or thriller into it. You know what I mean? Just so I can hit each and every different little algorithm. At some point, you're going to see this androgynous, childlike looking person with the short hair and the blue collar. Oh man, come on, get out of here.
well, it's that thing. Famously, like someone, this guy Sam Donsky coined the term director bullshit. Like the Russo brothers. And it was more so about people who made these modern day IP blockbusters, but like secretly my movie's more in common with 3 Days of the Condor or The Parallax View. Like the Russo brothers said that about The Winter Soldier, but it's at the end of like, okay, like those are real political thrillers. You just made a movie where like Captain America is like trying to prove he's an innocent man while beating up the Winter Soldier. And Jordan Voight Roberts, who did Kong Skull Island, said this movie again is more in common with Apocalypse Now because it's again about the cruelty of war and how war is evil. But it's like this movie's about King Kong throwing a fucking ship turbine against a fucking these boneless or skinless bone dinosaur monsters. It's that thing where they buy to sell themselves on. Oh, I'm selling out by making this King Kong movie, or I'm to seem like they're an auteur. And I think someone like Nicholas Winding Refn is like, I want to make this type of movie, or this type of movie all into one. And that's where you get like this weird blend of like, it's in a way a story of like say human trafficking, but then also she's a Christ-like figure. And it's
some fucking alien girl.
It's just a chaotic mess. And it intrigues me because like at the end of the day, I'll get like, I'm a sucker for neon lights and again, clean visuals and great score and someone. And again,
you like the score in this?
Yeah, I love Cliff Martinez's score. Like he did a great score for Drive and Told to Die Young. Yeah, I thought
it sounded like there was like breathing or like
there's the one to kick off episode 5 is great.
In the score. I fuck with the score, like, but I fuck with like I liked moments in the Batman score. Mm-hmm. But I also really liked his name is Zola.
Oh, okay.
The score is Zola. They'll have things that are like in like 5/4 time, like just like really weird time structures or random melodies that kind of just play for 2 seconds. I don't know. It was an interesting. I like interesting scores. I also like moments in the Westworld one, but it was trance music.
I think it fits well because there are these long moments of a camera panning around an entire room as figures move, and again there's no back. It's not Sorkinism. It's not back and forth dialogue in the show. It's like when these people talk, they talk so quickly and quietly. It's like I know I'm here to do a job.
She's just like,
do your job. Like,
I didn't realize it would be, but because I didn't realize you would get me pregnant so quickly. Yeah. So here, 8,000 to still be good for you. No, we said 10. Oh, well, you don't have paper, so it'll be 7.
Yeah.
She's just like,
and that's when again, like someone like him, an auteur as a director coming to TV, it can't work because television has and will be the writer's medium. These people who want to tell longer stories over a season if they were allowed to, then another season. That's why famously like the Norman Lears existed, where they could create numerous shows and then spin them off into another show. And then David Milch became the same thing with like NYPD Blue. Well, then now I can do something like Deadwood. And then the guy who created CSI and Dick Wolf even. And today we have it like Vince Gilligan. He's like, I created Breaking Bad. What about the story that takes place before and after Breaking Bad?
That's when shit gets corrupted. I mean, I was having a conversation with my wife earlier today, and we were talking about because she doesn't really fuck with mafia stuff at all. But her reasoning made sense. She was like, I grew up and I've seen that stuff all the time. I've seen so much of it. Like at this point, why would I bother? And I mean,
I've told you that's why I don't want to watch The Sopranos. I've tried two seasons and I'm not interested in. I'm not interested on the satire of like.
But wait, first off, so you're not gonna watch The Sopranos, but
I'll watch Nick Winding Refn. Yeah. Because here's why: if I wanted to watch The Sopranos or the better version of The Sopranos, I would watch The Godfather or Goodfellas, which are like, this is the stuff
but
I like.
But what I'm
saying, not as good, and I hate that like Chris Montesanti is like, you survive when he shoots that guy in the foot. Like I'm like, yeah, I know, because you were in the movie in which the dude shoots you in the foot. Like I'm not here for that.
Sure,
like,
but see, this is the thing, and this is the problem. Season 1 of The Sopranos, just like The Wire. Season 1,
I won't get to The Wire. I'll get to a show I talked about, which is like a poor man's version of The Wire in Mayor of Kingstown.
You'll watch some bullshit, and they'd be like, "Well, yeah, it's going to be like that, so I'm not going to watch this."
No, I like go on about like why. So
yeah, let me. Hold on. TV versus movie.
Because I think I like stepped on TV, like TV that's good, but not great. You know what I mean?
That may be the name of the episode.
Because I sent you a graphic. It's the one of Kevin Costner and Jeremy Renner. If you want to put that on.
Kevin Costner, this shit.
All right, so the guy in the far left is Taylor Sheridan. He was on Sons of Anarchy, and Sons of Anarchy is what I mean. Like, it's a great base FX drama. It's Hamlet basically, but Hamlet with motorcycles. It's a guy who's meant to run the club one day as like its chosen king, but now he's just the prince that has to deal with everything. And it's them being outlaws, working with the cops, working against the white supremacists, selling drugs, all of that while trying to be clean. Taylor Sheridan was the good old boy sheriff deputy on that show.
Okay.
His character gets killed off. It's not that big of a spoiler, but his character gets killed off. Years later, he writes a film called Sicario.
Yeah, I know.
Which is a masterpiece, much to your chagrin. It's a classic.
Falsehood. Keep going.
That's what they call a banger. He also wrote a film called Hell or High Water. I haven't seen it, but it's supposed to be
really good.
Yeah, a modern day Western with Chris Pine, Ben Foster, Jeff Bridges, and he also wrote another film called Wind River, which he directed himself. It was his directorial debut with Jeremy Renner and Elizabeth Olsen, which is weird given how they were in Civil War in the same story arc in which Hawkeye saves Wanda.
Facts.
And he wrote those 3 scripts in like 1 year, apparently. Like, and he became like the hot scribe. Like, he basically became the new go-to guy.
He was white Tyler Perry.
No, now he is. Now he is.
I'm sorry.
But, I think he became what Shane Black once was, or like Shane Black wrote Lethal Weapon.
The fiction.
He added somewhat to Predator. I don't think except he fixed things, except like he created his own genre, which is like the modern day Western. He creates Yellowstone for Kevin Costner. Kevin Costner didn't want to do TV, but Taylor Sheridan's like, don't think about it as TV. Think about it as a 10-hour movie, which is the ultimate director bullshit of television. And
that's Netflix's fault though. Netflix is the
that's 2010 going forward, because something like Breaking Bad, which can be seen as a classic TV show, but then it'll have like Rian Johnson direct a solo episode like Fly, which is brilliant television, in which they're trapped in the warehouse trying to kill this fly before it can contaminate everything. But that's also what TV is, a bottle episode. Like, it's a cheat code, like, to get around advancing the plot. You just have a story that stays within itself.
No, yeah.
And that's the whole thing NWR said about Chol Dayunga. It was a 13-hour movie, even though it was 10 episodes. And then he hasn't said that, I think, about Copenhagen Cowboy, where it's supposed to be, a 6-hour movie or even a season, because this I'm going to say, like, a spoiler, the season ends with a question mark in terms of, like, will this go forward? But there's no announcement for a second season. And again, I don't think the numbers will back up in terms of like Netflix giving this guy.
This shit better not get it. Copenhagen Cowboy season 2.
Yeah,
That sounds awful.
And there's not even like, I guess you're some sort of Copenhagen cowboy, right?
But
Or
where does she
anything
go? Is it Miyu on another quest? Is it somebody else that's an alien and can make the flowers bloom and locks the hair can make women fertile
Well,
or
think
whatever
about like
the
the whole
hell?
point of Drive is like they call him Driver or the kid Bryan Cranston calls him like, and only God forgives. It's like no one. It is kind of implied that like wrath and justice is sought out, revenge is doled out. But back to Taylor Sheridan, he creates Yellowstone, which is this huge hit. Again, it's the modern day Western on television. And then Paramount gives him like carte blanche to do. They're like, well, what other ideas you have? He has this show called Mayor of Kingstown, which I just finished its first season. The season 2 returns tonight with Jeremy Renner, who just got in a serious accident a few weeks ago, which is crazy.
Yeah, his shit was off. His old shit was pushed in.
Yeah, in which he plays like this Michael Corleone type guy. Like he's a prison advocate. Like he helps people on the inside get things they need. And he works with the cops. He works with the prison guards. He works with the guys in prison. He works with this guy who's like the leader of the Crips on the outside. It's him trying to be like this fixer to everything in, and it's really like the poor man's Wire. And I listened to a podcast that talked about like it's like someone who made The Wire was like, oh, I can kind of do that, but not as good.
It's like somebody made The Wire and they're like, yo, Walmart will pay us a lot of money to make The Wire again.
Yeah, it's like what's a place that's not like Baltimore, but like that's underutilized? Michigan, because that's where it's this fictional town in Michigan called Kingstown, and like this place in the prison runs the entire economy of this town. It's like the prison funnels money to it. And then he does the prequel to Yellowstone, which is 1883, which is about Kevin Costner's ancestors coming to Montana.
Who cares?
He created this other show. I've seen the first few episodes of this. I haven't seen 1883 yet. I've seen a few episodes of Tulsa King, which is the show with Sly Stallone, where he's this mafia capo who comes out of prison looking to get rewarded, but he's sent to Oklahoma to then create racketeering there. And he's created that with Terrence Winter, who famously worked on The Sopranos. He co-wrote.
Who cares about these shows? I know who cares about these shows, but come on.
White people, like this is old white man TV, and this is what I mean. I've like stepped on TV, where like it's prestige, it's prestige, but it's still procedural. I mean, like the new show he has is 1923, which is still a prequel to Yellowstone, but it's Harrison Ford and Helen Mirren. And think about like who has it's these old white guys, and like, man, it's tough being a good man, but I'm also the bad man, ain't I? Like that's what these shows are.
Is the next show going to be 2023?
He has 3 shows in development at Paramount. One's called Lioness.
That's where it became Tyler Perry.
One is called Lioness with Zoe Saldana and Nicole Kidman, and now Morgan Freeman just joined the show. This is the show that Matt a few weeks ago sent us a thing where like they're filming the show in Maryland. Like he has a show called Bass Reeves, which is about the I think he was a real figure, Bass Reeves, who was the inspiration for the Lone Ranger, but Bass Reeves was a black man, so they whitewashed over Bass Reeves, and he became the Lone Ranger. And David Oyelowo is going to be playing Bass Reeves. And the other show is called Landman, about like oil drilling and like the business of oil in America. And Oscar winner Billy Bob Thornton is the star of that show. And you know what the crazy thing is about this show, about all these shows, Cal? Taylor Sheridan writes every episode.
That's Tyler Perry. That's Tyler Perry.
Every episode is written by.
Oh no,
him.
Yeah, I believe it. He's the white Tyler Perry. I'm telling you.
And he just says like, and he's like a real life rancher who bought like this ranch for $2.5 million, and he cares about selling horses. He's like, I just go into my room, I write TV from sundown to sunrise. Then I go out and be a rancher. Like it's just, and I'm not saying like his shows are poorly written, but you can tell like this episode. There's an episode of Mayor of Kingstown where Diana Weiss, who plays Jimmy Renner's mother, is like, they call her like Mrs. McCluskey. She's like, Miss, I'm a widower. I'm like I don't think you need to explain like a miss is up like it's those bigger. It's like these are CBS shows. Someone said that you can get away with violence in language because then there is extreme violence. There's nudity. There is.
But which show is the one that's not on Paramount Plus though? Is that Yellowstone?
Yellowstone, but Yellowstone they allow them to get away with certain things. Like they toe the line a little bit, but just like how FX for a while was like allowing Sons of Anarchy to swear and get away with certain gore, and I think other shows as well. But it's because on cable you can bend the rules a little bit more, even if you're not going to be prestige cable like HBO or Showtime or Stars. You're like the tier just right below. You're still above CBS, where like you can't show someone.
But that I don't know if it's right below. You're not going to tell what season of any of these Taylor Sheridan shows is going to stand up to the best seasons of Breaking Bad, let alone
I've
the best
seen
seasons of
all
The
the seasons of
Sopranos.
Yellowstone. It's an enjoyable show, and this is what I mean. Like I'll just prefer a show that I put on just to like kind of still be on my phone, but I'm interested by the story. But like I also know like it has a low ceiling and the potential for a high ceiling. Like at the end of the day, it's just like ranchers seek justice and like they run their ranch and
I don't understand. I don't understand how you can get
the
all into this
fascination.
shit.
But I can't.
I don't. You can get all into this. You can talk to me about the fly bottle episode of The Wire. I mean, of Breaking Bad, and then shit on The Sopranos that fathered all of this.
No, but I hated Breaking Bad, but the only part I liked was the fly because I'm like, I don't want to get back to this dude and his stupid family and his nagging wife and his sister and his klepto sister-in-law. I hated Breaking Bad. Like
you can't get mad at people for not acknowledging Jay Whiteboy screaming at people during the middle of a match because Roman Reigns does it, and then try and tell me about peak TV and not know a lick of the because
peak TV is this one man creating 8 different shows. He became the showrunner for Linus. That was supposed to be like he was supposed to hand that off to someone else, and they're like, "Can you do it?" And he's like, I can fit some time in to write 8 hours of TV.
We're way peak TV. Realistically, peak TV was the period after The Sopranos when like Mad Men and all these other shows were on TV going fine. But the reason that Mad Men was able to be Mad Men. I'm not watched that show, but I know those whole episodes where they take LSD and all this wild shit happen. That is out of the Sopranos rule book. You tell me about a show that has a dream episode where the dream episode ends up revealing some wild shit, but the dream episode may also be wild fucked up. Ask Annette Bening how much fun. Come on, don't you talk about amazing television, but you haven't gotten through the Sopranos season 1. It can be shaky. Tony Soprano's accent changes from the pilot to the second episode, but there was time when they shot in between. But the second season, it was very much how do we figure out telling this story?
But here's the thing about the second season. This is why I stopped fucking with the shows when they're like. When he goes to see a new therapist because she won't see him anymore, he's like, "Listen, Mr. Soprano, I've seen analyze."
No, but don't.
And he's like, "You're gonna compare me to analyze this?" I'm like, "Yes, that's what this show is, and I don't want that." Like,
it's not that though. But again, it's not that because the thing is, when you get to season 2, and you really start to see the way that they deal with situations like snitching, and I know snitching is like whatever, but like the way they handle it in the show. I wasn't watching season 2 when The Sopranos was on live. I saw the finale and I'm like, wait, they elevated crazy from season 1. And I went back to watch season 2. And guess what? By the time I got to season 3, I'm not saying it was a different show, but season 3 of The Sopranos is elite television. There's not too many episodes in that season where you're like, damn, this is filler. This is this is fucking boring. This has nothing to do with what's going on. It's not referencing anything that's I don't know, man. Like that there's certain moments in The Sopranos where it was amazing when it happened. And then to see the litany of shows that came after it and were based Mad Men is literally The Sopranos in the ad agency in a different era. You feel what I'm saying? Like they're doing all the same shit. It's just as iconic. But you're going to tell me, what's the shit you was watching? What's the Monsters or something? What the fuck was you watching?
The Mayor of Kingstown?
The Mayor of Kingstown. That's fucking crack. That's that real hip hop.
I wouldn't say it's crack, but I enjoy someone like Jeremy Renner, who Hollywood, even though Jeremy Renner has had some problematic things happen in the last couple of years, but like a guy who Hollywood was like, you're the next guy. And then the guys ahead of him were like, sit the fuck down, in terms of like Tom Cruise, Matt Damon, all the Chris's in the MCU. Everyone basically was just like, so him getting to go on TV and be poor man's Michael Corleone, I enjoyed it. I'm not saying it's amazing TV. There are again just like some it has some of the worst stuff I hate about TV, which is C stories, where like there's this whole plot about an idiot guard who gets duped by a criminal in terms of mailing a letter, and then he gets put in a different position. He fucks up there. They send him to a women's prison. He fucks up there, and that's what I hate about TV is like because you have more hours to fill, you have to create more plots.
Right.
You didn't watch Game of Thrones, but you had to cover it, back at Complex.
I know the gist.
And what I hated about Game of Thrones was how it had too many plots, too many characters, how it bounced all over the place. And it's like, oh, I don't care about the fucking what Daenerys is doing right now. Let's get back to Winterfell where the good stuff is happening, or whatever was your favorite part of that story. But something like House of the Dragon last year, which I enjoyed and didn't think I would, was much more concise in its plot because it focused on these 10 characters who were more who were basically related to each other either by blood or by marriage.
Right.
And it was on the first years of their life, then it for the first 5 episodes, and it time jumped for the last 5, and it told a better story. It didn't have as much action as Game of Thrones did, but I think they're building up to that, and that's why we're getting to something like Game of Thrones existing because of the prestige that HBO had with The Sopranos, which is entirely credited to The Sopranos and then The Wire, even though The Wire never won any awards, but it became the go-to show in hindsight when blogging exists. And like actually when you want to talk about TV, it's The Sopranos and The Wire. There's also flawed part about those shows is it created the dynamic of like, well, what's this? And like, so like, who's a hero, but it's not a hero, right?
Right.
Well, the Walter White thing, like I'm, a good man breaking bad to do this. And that's when you get and I think TV was basically, again, because it's by writers, the Aaron Sorkin types, David Simon, David Chase, Matt Weiner, whoever, David Mills, like TV became an excuse for guys to be like, maybe we ain't meant to live on the world, and maybe the world wasn't meant to live on it. Like stuff like that is what TV's built on, or like these quotes of like.
Well, I believe the women these days would say, the phrase is usually, guys need therapy, but instead they start a podcast. It's kind of like guys need therapy, but instead they start writing television. Like I think that's kind of that's fucking True Detective. It feels kind of like
and I'd like
men
True
working
Detective.
through their feelings. Yeah,
but
I bet you would.
But the best part of True Detective was again the out of time story in terms of like these two guys are telling the story from their perspectives, who's right, who's wrong, and also like again another problematic figure Cary Joji Fukunaga directed all 8 episodes and had an idea like I'm going to have these tracking shots, I'm going to have the cinematography this way from this time period, this way for another. It was a director. It was one sole writer, Nick Pizzolatto.
Yes,
it was his vision with these scripts, and then someone else's vision with Cary Joji Fukunaga, and that's why season 2 sucked because Nick Pizzolatto was like, it's all my scripts, and none of these directors matter. And even though he had Colin Farrell and Rachel McAdams and Vince Vaughn and Taylor Kitsch, like it didn't stack up to. And sure, that was at the height of the McConaissance, and Woody Harrelson's always going to deliver, but it was like that's where TV, and that's when like you see like it's funny how like the guy who created True Detective did the procedural of True Detective with that show, but it still tried to do all the things of like it still try to be True Detective in that way, and that's what I mean. Like TV can't. There's so much room for error. I don't give TV the benefit of the doubt, and that's why like it's hard to keep up if you're not feeling it 2 or 3 episodes in.
Right.
You know what I mean?
There's too much time devoted.
And that's where like I created a list of like the shows I missed out last year, that I would have that I was interested in based off their trailer or who was involved, but I didn't get to for whatever reason.
Like what? Run them down.
All right, so Barry season 3. I like the first 2 seasons of Barry a lot. Again, Bill Hader's done a great job. I think Barry season 2 is better than Barry season 1. And the whole point of Barry season 1 was like they had reshot that pilot numerous times, and it was I think originally supposed to be lighter, but they went completely dark. And that's the thing. Like you think of Bill Hader, all-time SNL cast member, in my opinion. Like this funny guy, but he creates this show where like, no, this is some fucking dark shit. To be honest.
No facts.
But it's again brilliant directed, whether it's him, Hiro Murai, or a few other directors. Andor, which I didn't get to, but that's now apparently the best Star Wars show.
Yeah, they love Disney that.
Plus.
The kids love that shit.
Rap Shit, which is Issa Rae's new show. I didn't get to that, but again, I loved Insecure, even though I still have to finish the final season of Insecure.
Oh wow, yeah. Me too.
I stopped after that. I stopped after that episode in which Lawrence and Condola had that fight about how to raise their child, because I'm like, ooh, this hit a little too hard. I don't want to keep. I want to take some time before finishing this, and we'll get into like why I think TV's. I'm down on TV is binge versus week to week. We'll get into that kind of to end in terms of like have we been spoiled by binge versus week to week, because Miss Marvel, I again got through the first half. I still have the last 3 to go. She-Hulk never started it, and the Sex Lives of College Girls season 2, which is like
people love that shit.
It's a great show. It's basically like modern day Clueless, and I'm a huge fan of Clueless. But all these shows have 2 things in common: Disney Plus or HBO Max.
There you go.
You know, I mean, like, and I think to me, like, those are the go-tos besides what Taylor Sheridan's doing on the Paramount Plus, in terms of like, this is the TV I want to watch. Because even though FX did have Sons of Anarchy, which I loved, it had Atlanta, which I still. Oh, Atlanta season 4, I never got to, unfortunately.
Damn, there's some Atlanta season 4 is probably my favorite season.
And I did like season 3. We talked about it with fam. Let me write that down now. I don't forget.
Yeah, please watch that.
And there was a spinoff. FX tried to capitalize on Sons of Anarchy. They did, or they're finishing now Mayans MC, which is the spinoff, because there was the Mayans motorcycle group that is filming its 5th and final season they just announced.
Yeah.
Which makes sense too, because the way season 4 ends is like that. You really can't go up from here. And it's like, what? No, there are other shows that they've done in the past few years have intrigued me. I didn't check out like The Old Man or The Americans.
You may need to get fam if you're going to do a Mayans episode. You may need to get fam on here.
Oh no, Fam and I had talked about. We were supposed to do it last year, but we might try to do it this year. And I think Mimi loves it too, so we might try to do it.
I'll produce it. Yeah, let's get to, because I don't know when it's coming back, but yeah, let's figure something out.
And yeah, no, I'm not interested in like Dave. Don't
even press play.
Or any other shows that they've been trying to do. I know they had that show Kindred, which looks
it's supposed to be good. Yeah, I haven't watched it.
Yeah, but I'm not again. I don't want to go to the slavery times.
That's why I haven't watched it.
No, thank you. Which is weird. Like that wasn't that whole movie Janelle Monáe did called Antebellum? Isn't that the same story where like a modern day woman goes back into
essentially? Yeah, but I think Kindred is actually supposed to be good.
Did you watch Antebellum?
No. I heard it was ass, and I said, you know what? There's other things I had to watch, and I never checked it out.
But yeah, I mean, if it's TV, I'm gonna give HBO the benefit of the doubt more often than not. Even though there are shows that HBO has put trailers for, I'm like, well, I'm not watching that at all. Whether it be like His Dark Materials, or
I'm good.
Some other shows they've put out in the past. But like, if you put up the graphic of the HBO shows I have, like these are the shows. So again, since I didn't start out with The Wire or Sopranos, Watchmen, even though it was one season, was brilliant. I loved it.
That was great television.
And it was by Damon Lindelof, who did The Leftovers, and I didn't watch The Leftovers. But to see him reinvent Watchmen when it was announced, you think, oh, like he's gonna do Watchmen the way it should have been done instead of the way Zack Snyder did. It's like, no, he's like, it was amazing when he announced, like, actually, I figured out I can't do Watchmen. What I'm gonna do instead is how I think Watchmen would work now. And I'm like, what the fuck are you talking about? And I'm not a Watchmen fan in terms of like the text, so I'm just like,
right.
What do you mean how Watchmen would work now? And then you work out like the idea of like people who would believe in Rorschach would actually be like the white supremacist what would now be known as QAnon type. That's brilliant. And the unfortunate part is like Don Johnson, who was this charming, charismatic guy, ends up being like a white supremacist, but he has this brilliant scene with like the TikTok with Regina King, who kills it. And what was her name? Sister. She was badass on that show anyway. But and again, yeah, Abdul Mateen kills. I mean, the whole God walks into A-Bar.
Yes,
I think is the best hour of TV in the last 7 years. I know everyone likes the episode about the origin of Hooded Justice, and that's a brilliant episode too. Shout out to Cord Jefferson who wrote that.
Big facts.
That the God walks into an A-Bar is, I think, the best love story kind of ever told, and it's because he tells her like, I'm going to tell you how it starts and how it ends, and she's like, what do you mean how it ends? Like, I can see how this plays out. Insecure, again, as much as I didn't finish it, I loved it, and that was a show when I first saw the trailer, I'm like, oh, I'm not really sure about this, because again, I was always out on like women who like, oh, I'm not attractive, like blah blah, like And it's more so the Amy Schumer thing of like, listen, if you're with someone, they obviously find you attractive. If Dolph Ziggler's banging you, Amy Schumer, he finds you
Jesus
attractive.
Christ.
Okay.
Jesus
But the whole point,
Christ.
like Easter, like, look at Easter, like she's a gorgeous woman. The whole point of that show is like, oh, I don't have this confidence. But again, as you figure out, like, oh, we're all kind of like this, where we don't think we're good enough for what we have or want.
Facts.
Succession, we've talked about Succession. It might have to do with Succession season 4.
Yeah.
Or
no, but big facts just because of the WWE.
I had that season 4. I mean, season 3 of Succession. I mean, season 1 of Succession was bad, but season 2 was great. In season 3, I finished it at the end of last year after not finishing it during 2021. It's like, yeah, the show's fucking great. You know what the show is? It's Brian Cox. It's fucking Jeremy Strong. It's a great cast, and it's again the funniest show while being like the most serious show in terms of like how rich people are the villains of society. Which again, I don't need you to tell me that. Which is why I disliked Glass Onion and Knives Out Mystery, because it's just like, I get it, Brian Johnson, Elon Musk type dudes are the villains. No shit.
Succession is amazing. I think all the props to that show. If you don't know, get to know. It's probably one of the best shows on television on right now. Season 1, I wouldn't call season 1 bad though. It's just like season 1, episode 10 is an amazing epised and like solid episode of TV that then turns into an amazing television show.
And that's what I was saying earlier. Like TV, you have to actually let it settle in, and it's like sometimes they don't have 10 hours for it to settle in. Like there's always that report, like it gets going around episode 4. I said about Copenhagen Cowboy. Like episode 4 is when this is what the show should be. So like I gotta waste 3 hours.
But what I'm saying is
that it pays off, and that's. But like, that
doesn't mean. That doesn't mean you automatically like if it's a show that is probably suited for TV that just isn't going to be a good TV show. That doesn't mean you should make it a movie. Like you can do certain things, but sometimes it's better to just not do the shit.
Oh yeah, well like these shows, like again, Watchmen couldn't work as a movie because there was so much to tell. So Damon Lindelof's like, what if I did a whole nother show about a post Watchmen world and can spend the time telling like how the world used to be when like Spectra, who's now a CIA agent, right? Or she worked for the FBI. Like that aspect of that story was interesting. Wherever these Ozymandias in today's world,
right,
is now looked at as the villain because he created a monster that ended the world. Like
right.
Peacemaker. Again, this is I think the best superhero show to exist on TV.
It's a very good show.
But again, it has its cheat codes with the nudity, the violence, the language. Not just me being a huge John Cena mark, but again, he's great as a dramatic leading man, an action leading man, a comedic leading man.
Right.
Euphoria. At some point, we'll have to talk about Euphoria, but we'll also be talking about Sam Levinson's new show, The Idol, when it comes to HBO.
Oh my gosh! I guess that we could double up on that episode. Christ.
But yeah, Euphoria. I mean, season 2 very divisive. It's one man being responsible for all the direction and all the writing in terms of Sam Levinson, and I think
I like season 2.
I like season 2. You know what? It's beautiful to look at. Yeah, yes. It's beautiful to look at. There are some great performances by everyone.
Yes.
My girl, Sydney Sweeney, Alexa Demi. I forget Fezco's name, but he killed it. Maude Apatow.
Augustus Fezco.
And again, Zendaya. It's fucking Zendaya. Like, come on. It's like
she just won a Golden Globe. She already won her Emmys. Like, yeah, she's been on fire.
And last year they had what was supposed to be Showtime. That's what it was originally called, but they couldn't do Showtime because the channel Showtime. But I think they should have really like stuck it to them and been like, "Fuck you, we're the spirit." Because Showtime is really like, I don't want to say it's AEW to HBO's WWE, but Showtime is really like Impact compared to.
What if you did Show Space Time?
Winning Time is good, but I think they could have just called it like
Winning Time. Winning Time is something. Winning Time is something they actually say. I've never watched the show.
Well, Winning Time is a great 30 for 30 about Reggie Miller versus the New York Knicks, in which Spike Lee is the star of. I don't know if you've ever seen that, but you should.
So they stole. I've seen bits of it. I've not seen the whole thing. I was never a Reggie Miller fan. So I watched the parts of the times where I hated Reggie Miller, but they just appropriated the title of Reggie Miller 30 for 30 to.
Well, that's why it's Winning Time: the Rise of the Lakers Dynasty. I don't think they could have come up. But I love that show. Again, Adam McKay played a part in it, like he played a part in Succession. In terms of he directed the pilot and executive produced it.
With Will Ferrell, yeah.
No, well, that caused the rift between.
That wasn't with Will Ferrell. I'm sorry. That was one of the first ones that they weren't together with.
Yep, right? Because Will Ferrell wanted to play Dr. Jerry Buss and Adam McKay cast John C. Reilly instead, and that's why they're no longer friends.
That over there next to the black guy. That would have been
and then they created the best character of all time, which is fictional Jerry West, which pissed off real life Jerry West, and Jason Clarke's amazing portrayal as Jerry West is one of my favorite performances of the last couple of years. But HBO, there's a show on HBO that I'm looking forward to. I'll give it a shot, and that's what we're about to get into with The Last of Us, which premieres tonight. I mean, I didn't play the game, but I'm looking forward to it. And that's not a big thing for me. Like I didn't have to read Watchmen to get hyped or get prepped. I don't have to play The Last of Us to understand. Like I've known it's like, as you know, again, a lone wolf and cub story, much like The Mandalorian is, which is Pedro Pascal's other show, which is coming back in March.
Right.
When you're Pedro Pascal and they're like, we got another role for you, Pedro. It's you protecting someone across multiple places. Are you like, sign me up?
I think it depends on the story, and I'm glad it's The Last of Us and not something else because it's different. Like I'm not actually. Shouts out to another one of my homies. I'll be naming my homies all the time, but he been asking me for years. He lent me his copy of The Last of Us. It may be my copy at this point because like you have to play the game. I watched gameplay. It's hours and hours, and the opening scene. I've not watched the screeners that I have for it, but I can't wait to watch because the opening sequence of the game, I'm wondering if they recreate it in the show. But with The Mandalorian, yes, keeping watch of Grogu is a large aspect of the game, but it's not like there's time. I distinctly remember he was like, "All right, Grogu, here you go. You gonna hang out with these people for a while."
They realized like the point of the show, like this guy can't be
somebody's babysitter,
but that's like having to fight Jedis or crime lords, all of that. But then it was like the ultimate thing. Like, no, the story is like, how is this man how do you be a single father and a bounty hunter? That's the gist of The Mandalorian.
But the thing is with The Last of Us is, I mean, they're not mirrored in a way, but I mean, there is a lot of that where, a great responsibility is thrust upon somebody.
Grizzled protector has to.
And this how is this type of person going to master not lashing out and just taking care of business when they have to protect somebody else that is not going to be able to protect themselves. So I don't know, it's kind of like Homegirl is unique, but she's not Grogu unique. Like she can't I don't think she could like 100% fend for herself, at least in this stage. So there's a lot of that in play, which is kind of different. But if you want to look at these brilliantly laid out similarities that dripped in and be like, don't be deterred. It's a different type of show. It's a different type of story than Mandalorian with zombies or whatever you would want to call it.
Well, again, Mandalorian is case of the week. It's a procedural. It's this week the Mandalorian fights the crime syndicate on this planet versus
the keyboard player.
The Mandalorian defends this innocent village, much like akin to Kurosawa storytelling. It's that again. They've said, it's Gunsmoke meets Star Wars. Like he's the bounty hunter on a mission at the end of the journey, but there's always side missions in between them. The Last of Us is more cut and dry. Like to save the world, he has to protect this girl and get her to this point. But I think I saw the thing last week because this is where I came up with this bit where like they said in the game that they have to wear gas masks a lot because of the toxin on the show is what turns people into these zombies. But they said on the show they won't be allowing, on the show they won't be wearing the gas mask like they would in the game.
Yeah,
they just kind of changed it a little bit. I'm like, I bet Pedro Pascal's like, listen, I'm not covering my face on another show where I'm supposed to be the star because like how many times I'm like I basically tweeted like he's not Tom Hardy, who like Tom Hardy in numerous movies and shit was like, why don't you just cover my face?
Right.
Like Mad Max, cover my face. Like Dunkirk, cover my face. Bane, cover my face. Like people like, where's Tom Hardy? It's like he's there, but you can't hear him because his face is covered and he's doing an accent. So Pedro Pascal is like, I'm not gonna do another thing where my face is covered and I'm protecting some child. Let me people can see my face because I mean I didn't watch Narcos, which he was on. Right. I don't know about you.
I've seen bits of Narcos. I haven't gone through the whole thing.
But yeah, I'm looking forward to it. Hopefully it's as good as people say it is. And that's it. HBO. It'll always kind of deliver. The Mandalorian returns with season 3 in March.
Yeah.
I'm looking forward to that.
That's in March. Christ, that's soon.
Again, he'll be Banks and I do MVPs of the year. We've done that at BVD Pod where we've given someone who like kind of dominated the whole year. In 2021, we gave it to John Cena because he returned to WWE. He had Fast 9. He had the Suicide Squad. He kind of dominated the year in all these different aspects. Last year, we gave it to Tom Cruise because Top Gun made all the money.
Right.
The Mission Impossible trailer was a big deal. And then he ended the year with the stunt videos. It's like Tom Cruise saved cinema in one. So like 2023's MVP candidate so far is Pedro Pascal by having The Last of Us bleeding into Mandalorian season 3. So he's an early front runner in my eyes.
Like halfway into January.
But his competition early on too is Jonathan Majors, and that will segue into our other topic, which is the Ant-Man Quantumania trailer, Ant-Man and the Wasp Quantumania trailer. What do you think of that?
I cannot wait for Kang to destroy everybody. It looks I like high key. I just want to see him fuck everybody up, and
which sucks because as a big Paul Rudd guy, I don't want to see Paul Rudd get washed. But I also like Jonathan Majors a lot. So
yeah, you may have to.
Not as much as I like Paul Rudd, but I do like Jonathan Majors. Because like that's February. That's a month from now.
Yeah, it's very.
A month after that, Jonathan Majors is going to be in Creed 3. So again, he's another front runner for MVP candidate.
When I saw the because I knew that Kang was coming out in Quantumania and he was going to be doing Creed, but when we were going to see Black Adam and I saw the trailer for Devotion, I'm like, wait, shit, Jonathan Majors really locking down this winter. But people didn't realize it then; they realize it now with Kang.
We'll get to Devotion in a second. Even not it's something related to that in a way, but and I can think of the only way Jonathan Majors got to do this is his HBO show got prematurely canceled in Lovecraft Country, and I never checked that out, unfortunately.
It had some good stuff in it. I wasn't the biggest fan of the show overall, but it had some good stuff in it. No cap.
But yeah, that's why he's allowed, I think, to be now this big star on the big screen instead of on TV. And he had that great performance in The Five Bloods, which I really enjoyed him in that film. 100%. And you can see that this guy had something. But yeah, Quantumania, I'm looking forward to it again. Like it just showed like Kang's for real, and everyone's right. We talked about it a few weeks ago, like Kang versus this lineup of Avengers. It's almost Jordan level. Like you can send Sean Kemp and Gary Payton. You can send Charles Barkley. You can send Karl Malone and John Stockton. You can send everyone, and this guy's going to knock them down no matter what.
Facts. Super facts.
Unless you revive Chris Evans from the past, and Thor shows up to be Thor again, it's going to be interesting. But
Christ almighty. Some of that stuff I like. Some of that stuff I'm like, whatever. Get away.
But speaking of Devotion, his Devotion co-star Glenn Powell has 2 projects that I'm interested in. One was announced this week. It's a romantic comedy starring him and my girl Sydney Sweeney, directed by Will Gluck. And Will Gluck is a name who has been relegated to like nothingness. He meant a lot to me because he directed this film called Fire Up about high school football players who go to cheer camp to become cheerleaders, but it's just about them getting with chicks. It's an underrated teen comedy of the 2000s, one of those last hurrahs in that genre.
He did Easy A.
And then he did Easy A, which is an amazing film. Great performances by Stanley Tucci and Patricia Clarkson as her parents.
Yeah.
I've always been a big Emma Stone fan, both attractiveness to her and just like great actress, great comedian. That movie's brilliant. And then he did Friends of Benefits, which I like a lot because that was during that time when they had Friends of Benefits, which was Justin Timberlake, Mila Kunis. They had No Strings Attached, which was Ashton Kutcher, Natalie Portman. And they had Love and Other Drugs, which was Jake Gyllenhaal and Anne Hathaway. And that was the time where like, what if we had the most beautiful people in Hollywood?
Fuck.
And then find out they should be together.
Right. Love and Other Drugs was crazy, though.
Those 3 films came out in a 10-month span.
Yeah. No, I remember.
Let's get these beautiful people to like, let's just hook up, even though we're close friends. And then at the end, we realize that was my time. That's when I'm like getting into film. Like, that's my favorite genre. Like, because it's the Harry Met Sally for me. Like, that's why that movie's iconic. then great. The whole point of that movie is like they were friends first, and then they became romantic later. But it was like Billy Crystal, Meg Ryan were like, yeah, we're such good friends, but we'll never have sex, and they have sex, and it turns out to be wrong.
See, now I know why I get a little more insight into Drift's relationships. I think I understand what's going on. No, I'm just kidding.
Well, no, preach. No, I want to hear what this.
No, I mean I was legit just making a joke, but I mean it would be funny to see if like your situation was just that you keep fucking people that you should just be friends with.
I think that is the case. I don't know.
Yeah, you'd be attracted to them. You'd be like, yeah, that's my homie.
So Will Gluck is making his return after directing the 2 Peter Rabbit films.
I saw that. That is interesting.
So I think Hollywood sent him to Hollywood jail after he did the live action Annie, which tanked. I think that was his big shot, big IP that they were trying to revitalize. There were, I think, numerous times where, like, Jay-Z was involved. I think he was as a producer. I think Will Smith was involved too as a producer, but Jamie Foxx was the star.
Right.
Quavanzine Wallace, if that comes here. That's when she was supposed to be like the next big thing, and she's disappeared. I don't know if that's a good thing or bad thing.
I mean, she got an
Oscar nomination.
She got an Oscar nomination, but then like she was getting like dumb shit. Like there was a situation. Was it John Legend wife had some tweets or whatever about her back in the day, and it was what the hell? I'm sorry.
Like unnecessary criticism or Well, he did Annie, that tanked, and he's had this deal with Sony. I think all those movies are either produced by Sony. Easy A, for the benefits, even fired up as must be Lionsgate. And Sony, I think, is responsible for Peter Rabbit, so that's why he did both Peter Rabbit films, and those made a shit ton of money, which is like, I mean, kids got to see movies. Like, remember what he said in Atlanta about Flo Rida? He's like, moms like rap music too.
No, well, the thing is, that's facts. The sad part is, was this the 2014 Annie? The sad part is they could still be good movies. All right, so we're starring quote. What was the situation with her? I swear it was an Oscars because homegirl was tweeting. What's her name? What's John Legend's birth? Chrissy Teigen. What Chrissy Teigen allegedly said about her. This would have been 2013. She said about a 9-year-old girl, she called her an insecure, attention-seeking troll.
And this is Chrissy Teigen who's saying that.
Yeah, she
I think someone might have to look in the mirror when they type those words. Tweets?
Everyone else seems afraid to say it, but Quavanzine Wallace is kind of a cunt, right? That's what she tweeted about a 9-year-old.
I think Chrissy Teigen has kind of shown those words are about her more than anything.
Yes, it was just but again, this was back when Chrissy Teigen was on fire. People loved her because she was just on Twitter being lit. She's being real and woo.
Be honest, no, she was an attractive woman.
That's when it started. People knew about her because she was attractive. What I'm saying is,
and that's when an attractive woman can get away with whatever. Like the whole Julia Fox thing, and now it's on its last legs. It's like everyone's like, Uncut Gems. Julia Fox is gonna be a huge star. I'm like, she's hot. She's not a great actress. Who are you fooling?
But wait. The thing is, Drip, Julia Fox could have done something, but she made terrible decisions. She was in a couple of films, but nobody saw these films. She wasn't in any.
It came out like she's a weirdo too. Like these hot women.
But remember,
weirdos. They be scaring the men.
But remember the course of action. It was Uncut Gems came out. Who is that? She signs. She doesn't. She made like 2 very small
move by Steven Soderbergh, which is an HBO Max movie no one watched.
And then she was in some other private chat. She was in like some really random films. She had a baby. She had the spat with the man.
Mm-hmm.
And then
she became Kanye West's muse for a little while.
In that time frame, she started dropping weight. She started changing her appearance, and I've seen her say, she said a lot of it is specifically because of men. I'm not trying to shoot her bail. I'm just saying there's a reason that it didn't just go from she was the new it girl in Uncut Gems to she's this talentless hack. Like she may not have had any talent,
She
but
didn't have any talent. Come on,
she
let's be real.
if she had gotten a film that was of higher status than Uncut Gems, which is one of like the upper, I don't care what anybody says, it's one of the upper echelon of A24 films. You know what I mean? It's just in
Hold
terms
that
of
point too.
in terms of just like accolades and acclaim that's come to A24 off of Adam Sandler being in it with Kevin Garnett alone. She needed to be in some like decent Hollywood film, whether it was like a B grade action film or some horror type thing where maybe she was like a second tier lead or something like that. She was going into Nothing Burgers and then changed the course of her life because she had a baby and everything. So it was like everything kind of switched within like a 2-year time frame where she could have jumped in and gotten more success in Hollywood if she really wanted to.
And maybe that's just because it's the double standard for men, but like good-looking guys can go far in Hollywood with having no talent at all either.
They were catcalling Brad Pitt off the Golden Globe stage.
Well, actually, Brad Pitt is someone that actually does have talent. Because I think Brad Pitt actually is a good actor. In fact, like someone like Channing Tatum burst on the scene by being this great dancer. He might not have been the best actor at the time, but what people found out is like Channing Tatum is incredibly funny if he has the right material, like the 21. Like that's the thing. Like, and someone like Steven Soderbergh molded Channing Tatum with Magic Mike.
Right.
And some other things, and Quentin Tarantino put him on the film. Like, if there's something with this guy, if he gets the right tools, it's that thing. Like a coach can get the most out of a player who might not have anything, but in the right system, he's a key part. Like, you know,
facts.
Someone like Julia Fox, I think worked so much because she was a Safdie's brother muse at that point. I think she had said it herself that she was Josh Safdie's muse,
something like that. Yeah, that's some real Hitchcock shit. But
yeah.
Facts.
And that's why that film exists again, because it's about like their father and then, you know, I think his infidelity as much as like it was him being a gambling addict and not there. If I believe what that movie's supposed to be about, because it's based on their life more or less. He was a jeweler, much like how the Howard character is a jeweler.
Right. All facts.
But you said A24. I had sent you the Beau's Afraid trailer.
Yeah, that was interesting.
Can we stop with like the 70s music in
movies? It's the drip. It's the thing. Just like for a while, what can't tell me not. What was the no need to God? Was a guy the Church in the Wild was every movie
No Church in the Wild, Run This Town. Yeah,
it's like there's just, you know, trends in Hollywood at this time. Maybe it's just the fact that, you know, random 70s music just has to be blaring all the time.
But that's what I mean, the trailer visually, again, like Ari Aster knows how to make a movie. Whether that movie will be satisfactory towards the end or even at the start, who knows? I love Hereditary in terms of like it's the best edited film in terms of how it moves from the model to the real life house and all of it. Midsommar, I haven't watched since seeing it in the theater, but that was still, I'm like, wow, what an impressive feat of filmmaking. But I get it. Men are shitheads and like are terrible boyfriends. I don't think I needed almost 3 hours about it.
Look at it. That would have been Midsommar was what Copenhagen Cowboy could have been. 3.5 hours of a slog of men or pigs.
That's society as a whole, and one man is like, I don't know if you can compare the two really. I mean, Ari Aster.
You really can't. There's
but I know what you're doing. Yeah, that the whole. Well, that's society as a whole. That's why I enjoy like.
Actually, the better A24 comparison to Copenhagen Cowboy would be the movie Men. About the
I haven't seen that Alex Garland's film. I haven't seen.
Look at the trailer. I mean, the trailer.
Oh yeah, no, it was. Well, that was a trip when like Rory Kinnear, his face was on. A child's face and every man, it was like the creep. I'm like, see, this is what at that point I was like, we don't need this face technology anymore. As much as we don't need to revive people from the dead, we don't need people to legit become other people.
See, this is so old. Like, was it 97? I'm not gonna put. I would blow your damn brains out if we played this video. But this artist, Aphex Twin, in 97, I think he had a song called "Come to Daddy." and he was like electronic music producer, very prolific, very popular, very he made a lot of money off shit he was doing, but he was really twisted. Like he would just be in his house in Cornwall making shit, and then a year and a half later he would release it. But in the time when it would take him to put out new music, he would realize that like like-minded people would start flocking to his shit. So he made a song called "Come to Daddy" as kind of like a shot at the people who were like riding the bandwagon. Somebody made this twisted video where they took the like shit literal, and it's a bunch of little like school children terrorizing these neighborhoods, but the school children, they all have his face on him. So there's like this grown man's face on these little kids, and they're like swinging sticks and beating people up and like terrorizing shit. And this was 1997. So by the time
that was your Copenhagen Cowboy.
So like by the time the Men trailer came out, I was like, yo, I'm so, like, yeah, it's this like, oh my gosh, I'm like, I'm not saying these things aren't necessary. I'm not saying these things are bad. I'm just saying like we could figure out a different way to say some of these things. Like it doesn't have to be every man's face is the one face, and it's this like no, men are monsters.
Oh, I know that. Yeah.
What was the film that came out about the woman who she was trying to avenge her friend's rape? Oh my god, it came. Bo Burnham was in it.
Promising Young Woman.
Promising Young Woman.
See, and I loved Promising Young Woman because again, Promising Young Woman is like. I thought about it at the time, and it even fits more now. Is like a companion piece to like NWR work. Because there's a lot of neon, there's a lot of red, there's a lot of blue. Yeah, except it's so well written.
Yeah, except that there's like a beginning, middle, and end. It's real fucked up, but you're like, this is a great statement on
like,
that. Yeah.
It is about like the depravity of men and what they will do, and like a woman seeking vengeance. And if you look at the character in Too Old to Die Young and Miu and Copenhagen Cowboy, you will see like these women who seek out these these avengers of a fallen friend or whatever it is, and then I mean that like in the best way. And
right,
yeah, I know I love that film. I thought it was brilliant. But I think it is. I don't know if everyone from now had the point of like, let me do Nicholas Winding Refn, but for women and done correctly. Like,
right.
I think she's a lot smarter than that.
No, obviously.
What did she sign on? She signed on to, I think, do a polish of Ballerina, which is like cash them checks that way you can fund whatever's next. I ain't mad at you.
Exactly. Maybe that's what has to happen. Maybe Ballerina money's going to make a Promising Young Woman 2 or whatever.
Or sell your winery if you're if you're Francis Ford Coppola. Like, hey, the studio won't give you 120 million. I'll give it myself.
The film ain't going to make itself, right?
So Megapolis, they've said, is in production turmoil, much again akin to Apocalypse Now. This man is 80 and is still like, production. Why do I have trouble with it?
Like making movies, yo.
Why is it, all right? Do you respect like the Coppolas or more so the Ridley Scotts? Because Ridley Scott's 80 years old on set going like, cut.
I mean, I'll say it like this. I'm fine with Ridley Scott. What was Ridley Scott's last film? He's doing
The Last Duel. But he's doing Napoleon is his next film. I watched the first hour 45 of The Last Duel. I didn't finish it.
What? Yeah, well, that's the thing. Like I was gonna make a point, but then I'm looking.
It wasn't bad. It's just I didn't fit for that day. I just like stopped watching.
He's 85. Like, and my thing is, if somebody's out there, like he did Prometheus like 10, 11 years ago. Like I'm fine with or like the Martian or so. Like there's interesting things that if you're House of Gucci, if you can do things where you're not like taking up space for somebody that's actually trying to do something.
Well, no one else will make these films is the thing.
That's what I'm saying. It's
no one else makes prestige epic films, like, so he's now the go-to guy. Like,
I'm fine.
Napoleon film, no young up-and-comer is like, who the fuck's Napoleon? Ridley Scott's like, I've read about Napoleon for like 40 years. Like, and this is a film that at one point Stanley Kubrick was supposed to make before he could never get it made, whatever reason. I think the weather was the ultimate thing. Like when they tried shooting it, it's raining. It's like I think the whole point, like, it was literally Waterloo. Every time he tried to like make the film, but
if you're holding up the way of progress for certain people. I think that's kind of whack. But um
But the irony is like these old guys have to make, and I don't mean that in a negative way. Ridley Scott's a legend, and Michael Mann is too. Michael Mann's Ferrari is like trapped in not production hell because the movie's finished. It's trapped in distribution hell. Like the company STX that founded it, that produced it, it is having a hard time getting it distributed. Much like this Guy Ritchie film, Operation Fortune, which I was hyped for. That was supposed to come out last year.
It was all good a couple of years ago for STX, though.
Yeah,
it was they were moving for a minute.
They got bought out by another company. Apparently, was the thing. But also
COVID fucked everything up. They were
everything was good for them while their movies didn't make any money. That was the sad point. They funded all these movies to be a big deal overseas, and the overseas shut down. Like American movies can't come over here anymore.
But that's the thing. But they were able. It was the Blumhouse situation. They were able to make movies that didn't make a lot of money because they were spending less.
You talk about Megan?
I'm talking about again, the Blumhouse, especially for horror, they'll throw $20 million at you, say, yeah, that's what you got. And that sounds like chump change to somebody making movies. To us, we're like $20 million. I could make that shit stretch forever. To make a movie, that's
20 million. Like I ain't making no movie.
20 million is nothing at this point for a filmmaker, but they're able to turn that around. And when the movie then makes 50 or then makes 80, they look like they're fucking geniuses. It's all the same
bet
stuff.
Little, win big.
That's just the mentality.
Versus something like Megapolis is like bet big, lose big, and that's what kind of happened. Like that, people are quitting or fired. Then he comes out and says, "That's overblown. I know what I'm doing. No one's been fired. No one's quit." They say the effects aren't working because he's not spending the right amount of money, and they're trying to do what they did on The Mandalorian, which is like realistic effects for a background for a world that doesn't exist without doing like the typical blue screen, green screen method. It's that new technology that Disney Lucasfilm created for like they're on the sound stage. And they built everything surrounding it, and then everything got behind it doesn't exist, which is still insane. I watched the pilot to The Mandalorian earlier. I'm like, yeah, so none of this exists, but it looks so good. Like
that does sound nuts. Yeah, it does sound interesting. I don't know, man.
And Adam Driver is the star of this film. From the image you showed a couple weeks ago on Black Wrestling Proper, like that's the movie he's making with Francis Ford Coppola and Audrey Plaza and Shia LaBeouf. A bunch of
Drip the Future is
a bunch of other people are involved in this movie, and again, this man who. Again, he made The Godfather, Cal. He made The Godfather Part 2, and Hollywood's like, we're never giving you any money again, Francis. And
I mean, yeah, because he's like, yeah, we gotta be in Italy. We gotta have.
They had to.
We gotta have the finest. Well, like you can do it then. You can't do that every time. That's why. But that's the thing.
Yeah, it's true because he's like, we have to go to Vietnam, but they went to Hawaii, which I think served its purpose in terms of like the jungle and the ocean and the beach.
No, but the thing is, you got to remember.
But he's like, but we had to get the real helicopters, and they're like, are you fucking insane? Like
Hollywood is only going to spend buku bucks if they know they're going to get a return. That's why the budgets on Avatar and the MCU films are a lot greater than A Promising Young Woman or some of these other films.
But even James Cameron said, like, I have to make over $2 billion to get Avatar 3
to break even. Yeah, but the flip side is Netflix has a gajillion dollars to spare. That's it.
And all their shows and shit. All their movies and shows look like shit. Like the whole point of The Gray Man, I was like, that's not Ryan Gosling in that free falling moment from.
But you gotta
help the air carrier. Like it's.
But it depends. Like because a show like fucking what's this shit? Copenhagen Cowboy will look away, and aesthetically you can make it work, but it really depends on what Netflix is trying to spend money on because they spent money for Spike Lee to shoot on film over in Vietnam because they thought they had a award season prospect.
But then they didn't spend the money for the de-aging like they did for The Irishman.
That's again, and The Irishman. You know, if they can do what they want to do with it, but they can say, hey, we think this is going to be top tier gold. We're going to throw everything into it. They could say, hey, we can make it so Spike Lee does the movie he wants to do with a chance for award season and him not have to take out loans on fucking credit cards again. Or we can just say, hey, Nicholas Winding Refn, you can do 6 episodes of whatever the fuck you want to do for like what do they call whatever the Danish, like what's 10,000 Danish whatevers. How much did it cost to take a shower? 100 kroners. You can spend 100 kroners on
Couple
6
dinar.
episodes. Yeah, like they're giving it. It really depends on what they're trying to do, and because I think you get different levels with it. Like at Netflix, they may give Nicholas Winding Refn a fucking a Metro card, but he gets creative control.
Yeah,
and you
I
just
think that's what they want more than anything. Is I think they're willing to give people creative control. Like I said, that's why I was disappointed with the Gray Man. It seemed like the Russo brothers had all the creative control, which I think was a negative thing. Is like
right. They did.
It made me realize like, oh, maybe these guys weren't the geniuses. It was Kevin Feige at the helm, and that's what we've realized in the last 2 years of the MCU. Is like by this guy kind of being at a distance, it actually hurt the MCU.
Right.
So once he kind of steps back into the fold full time, let's see if it goes back to that peak period of 2014 through 2019 of
facts.
Everything's a hit pretty much, or like the misses are just one compared to like every other thing's a miss.
No, 100%.
And that's why, I mean, when we're talking TV versus film, and we're going to be wrapping up soon, but like why I prefer stepped on TV in terms of like these shows, it's just stuff I can, like I said earlier, like spend a little bit of time on. There will be a show that does have like my main focus, but I'm more always interested in movies because so much more goes into that.
Right.
And that still always feels like the big event to me, whereas like growing up, I didn't have HBO right away. So I got HBO when I had my own money in life. And I'd say like those shows I had in that graphic are my favorite HBO shows. And one of my favorite HBO shows of all time, I didn't get to watch, and that was Entourage. And that was, again, in that Entourage is like, what if we did bro sitcoms, but you can swear and you can have the nudity and right. all that. And compared to like anything else, like only really HBO can do that. And Disney Plus is doing a good job with, I want to see this. What if there was a Star Wars TV show? Would that be better than a Star Wars movie? Because they have trouble making those the last few years, and it seems to be working out. Book of Boba Fett wasn't as good as The Mandalorian, but Obi-Wan was good.
Right.
And the Andor was supposed to be good, and we're seeing the opposite with the MCU. Like maybe a lot of these are supposed to be movies because we don't need too much time with these characters, and that's always a flaw. I think a show I'm going to be looking forward to whenever it gets whenever a trailer for it comes about is that the Gentleman TV show, the spinoff from the Guy Ritchie film, because I love that movie. You enjoyed it, and the whole point of that movie, though, was like, I'd love to spend more time with the Colin Farrell coach character, or why is Charlie Hunnam so OCD and like this?
Hey, if you can make it make sense, if you can
but they split it off to where it's a whole different thing, and that's why I hate about TV. If it's not going to be a continuation, it's just spun off into itself completely, and just the name is the same. Like the Gentleman won't be. It's not going to be Matthew McConaughey on this TV show or Charlie Hunnam. It's going to be Theo James, as I said a few weeks ago. Like he's going to play a character who's now running the pot farm.
You didn't watch Better Call Saul?
No, I never finished Breaking Bad. We talked about this before.
Better Call Saul is a better show. I mean, you have to make it through Breaking Bad to get to Better Call Saul, but low key, you could start watching Better Call Saul and then get into Breaking Bad if you wanted to, and then finish it with that shitty El Camino movie. You'd be good to go.
And see, that was the thing too, right? Like they made this whole movie to be like, what's Jesse Pinkman up to? Instead of doing a whole season of what Jesse Pinkman's up to, let's just do more contained, because maybe there isn't more than what he had after him driving away. I know that's the thing. It ends up him driving away, and that's it. But
they probably didn't need to make the movie either. But like maybe that's it. But that's the thing with TV and movies in general. Nothing ever ends. Well, like things end, like mine,
and that's what
But if it's popping, like Watchmen being one season of a show is rare, unless the show gets canceled. Like you're not always finding a lot of these shows saying, okay,
that was supposed to be The White Lotus. I didn't watch that, but the whole point is like it was a limited series, and they're like, what if you did this in a different location?
Yeah, that a lot. Because they did it with Big Little Lies. They did it with. I'm surprised they didn't do it with Sharp Objects. They did it with The Leftovers. It turned out better.
Sharp Objects basically is like companion piece to Big Little Lies in a way. Like
Sharp Objects, I love Sharp Objects. Shit was twisted though. But anyway,
it's that thing where like TV, there's again, because there is so much story to tell. I think that's the thing where like I get mad when I can tell the show is jumping off the cliff or like steering in the wrong direction. I'm like, let's get back to what makes this show good.
Right.
Which is like, if a movie's bad, it's all right. At least it's a bad movie. It's 90 minutes. I might never watch this movie again.
Facts.
Or there's some good things where like, I'll watch this every couple of years to be like, this portion of the movie's good. But like with TV, more often than not, when a new season's coming out, like, oh, should I rewatch the whole season to get reacclimated, to get, what's going on? Because sometimes you always don't want to watch the previous one because like, oh shit, that did happen, and you're out of out of
the loop,
out of the loop, and all that. Or like, this season 3 is underway right now. Do I have to watch? Should I just, even though I haven't watched the first 2 seasons, should I just watch them quickly so I can get caught up to what's now and get a binge watch? Because I would prefer to binge watch instead of watch week to week, because it would be like, if I watch 3 episodes in a row and don't see it's going good, at least I'm like, all right, I can stop now, maybe try to pick it up again later. Whereas like week to week, it's like, every week this show is going to eat at my attention. I'm going to be like, is this worth it? Like, what happened with House of the Dragon is I didn't watch the first 5. So when the 6th one was going to come out, I was like, you know what, let me watch the first 5 now because they're all available and see if the show's worth it. And I'm like, you know what, it is good. And then I started watching it for the last 5 week to week. I'm like, you know what, it's worth my time watching this week to week now.
I just like,
what do you prefer?
I mean, I grew up watching TV. I like it, watching something else coming on the next week, like anticipating another episode of the show, another part of the story. But again, I watch pro wrestling. Like that's I've been doing that with the WWE since the 80s, you know what I mean? And it's probably it's funny because I didn't think of them as the longest running episodic television thing until they started saying it, but
that bullshit.
But it's loose because I mean, if I don't want to say Hulk Hogan, if Iron Sheik showed up on Raw right now, it's not like he would be a new character. It's happened before, but like
they
would say, "Oh,
they'd have history and footage to show the Iron Sheik."
This guy in the 80s or whatever, he's the guy that Hogan beat. Like it really is more self-referential than I think we give it credit for sometimes. But my thing has always been for a good show, I can't wait for the next part of the story. A lot of time I don't want the story to end unless it's like a really good story that needs to end. I'd rather you not keep something going just to keep it going. I hate stuff like that. But I also don't think a movie is always going to be the way. Think about how many like, I don't know if what the shit was it called the Many Saints in Newark.
Would that have worked as a season better than a movie? Yes or no?
I mean, it probably if they were able to sit down and do a 10 episode season of that show, I think it could have fixed a lot of the problems with that movie, because there were things that were in that movie that's just like happened and then it was gone. Yeah, I mean, it's
seeing the one show, and this was probably my favorite show when I was watching it, but I didn't finish it, was Mr. Robot.
Right.
And again, Mr. Robot was a movie idea that he turned into a TV show because it was too much.
Yes.
Sam Esmail said, and he famously said, like, the first season is like the first 20 minutes of the movie. And when he said, I'm like, make fucking sense, because a whole lot happens in that first season, and it's great. And I'm like, and it's all this stuff with what was the Swedish guy, like that stuff is even good with like his home life and how and then the stuff with the hacker group and even Elliot himself and the Mr. Robot character. Like, I'm like, how can you fit that all into a movie in one movie? That's the point. So like, I just kept writing, and it became to the point where it's not a movie anymore. But to say like this whole season of TV just would have been the first 20 minutes of a movie, but I was able to extend more. I'm like, what the hell?
No, that's actually
nice. And that was that was one of the first things where I'm like, I really cared about how things look, because that had the best framing with like that low quadrant framing where people are in the bottom of the screen to the left or to the right. And it's that Coen Brothers reverse shot where like there's never a behind the head look of anyone. It's just clean frames. And that's when I got real into like the visuals of stuff. And I got a lot of wonders. So the whole episode was a wonder. And the tracking shots and all that, and the cinematography, how it would be super bright in some areas and then just the darkest dark, like when he's in the house in season 2. Which is a spoiler for what happens later. I think I stopped during season 3. I don't think I finished because it's 4 seasons, right?
4 or 5. I'd have to go back and check. I think it may be 4, but I think it
Yeah, because he did the show Homecoming in between, and I never got
I
to
was going to
that.
ask the first season of Homecoming. I think is better than the second season.
But the whole point of Homecoming season 2 is he didn't come back.
But it was also like I think season 1 of Homecoming was the pod. Again, it was one of those things where like that was the material.
Mhm.
So when you go back and try and make the show, and it doesn't have material, you really have to have good material. And the second season of that show was not good material compared to the first. It
And
was
that's what I
good,
mean, where,
but
like,
it wasn't as good as the first.
Every time I feel like I want to watch Mr. Robot, I'm like, oh, do I have to start from the beginning? I've started from the beginning two or three times because, like, one time I watched it with a girlfriend. I'm like, I think you will enjoy the show if we watch it.
Robot's good,
but I'm like, to finish the series, I'm like, do I have to start from the beginning? And like, I know what to expect, and that's the negative part about TV to me. Again, like, you have to do all the catch up, whether it's necessary or not.
Yeah, but I think it's, again, you don't sound like somebody who.
If a sequel is coming out to a movie, I could just rewatch it again. Like Creed 3's coming out, I just gotta watch 4.5, 5 hours of Creed 1 and 2, and I'm not gonna have a problem with that because I like those two movies.
Yeah, but but you also sound like somebody who, like, you'll maximize your time just to make sure that
if I gotta start watching New Japan now because Jay White might be staying or going, and Mercedes Moné is gonna. Let's talk about that real quick because we talked about Jay White. If I'm gonna be happy if he chooses the E over AEW. I had said no because I would prefer the matchups he'd have in AEW, and I think they would stay true to Jay White, the character.
Right.
He's facing Eddie Kingston next, which, I mean, Eddie Kingston, okay wrestler, but he's not on Jay White's level as a talker or a wrestler.
I don't know what that match is going to look like, but I can't tell what that.
It'll be pretty good.
I can't tell what that match is going to mean for Jay White either way. Like it could be always.
It'll be the whole point. It'll be after the loser leaves Japan match.
But that'll be a transition into AEW because Eddie Kingston's an AEW guy,
or just he wrestles strictly New Japan USA and can never come back to. Which maybe that'll allow him to still be in AEW and New Japan if that's his goal, is to, because he wants to live stateside now because he lives in Florida.
No, I mean, that's not too exciting. I'm not going to start tuning into New Japan USA to see Jay White, but I understand.
Well, how dare you?
I'm sorry, Trip. That may be it, though, huh? I think we got to.
We gotta. So watch these shows that Taylor Sheridan's doing. If you like stepped on TV like I do, check him out. Don't waste your time watching The Wire.
Nobody in our audience is watching this shit. I'm sorry.
I think some people do.
I don't know who you think you're podding for right now, but they're not watching fucking 1883, 19.
I haven't even watched 1883.
Yellowstone. The Sylvester Stallone show, maybe.
I'm a big Kevin Costner guy. I like Compton Kevin. He's my guy.
Anyway, Trip. Where the hell?
The Last of Us. We might try to do it every couple of weeks at the end or start of the show in terms of if we stay up with it.
Maybe next week we'll watch and talk about it. I think it may be one of those ones that people are going to be tapped into. So we could keep some.
And after that, like I said, it'll be The Idol. The Weekend's The Idol. We'll transition into that show, and then Succession season 4. We're transitioning into that. Maybe we might be covering a show every few weeks on White Noise, along with whatever wrestler.
Everything's really starting to kick in right now. Yeah, 100%. Where can people find you?
You can find me on Twitter at Davis, aka Drip, Instagram Davis Colton DC. Every Thursday night on YouTube, Black Wrestling Proper. Make sure you check that out with Mimi, Math, Bam, Khal, and myself. Again, White Noise every weekend on the BRP Patreon. The following week it'll be on YouTube, and we'll do a mixture of pop culture, wrestling. You never know. The whole point of this, I know, is chaotic in all the places. Like, there was some good movie news to talk about. Again, I'm hyped for this movie that Francis Ford Coppola is probably going to shoot and never come out.
Yeah, how about that?
That's what's going to happen, or either they'll just quit the production. But this movie by Will Gluck, starring Glenn Powell and Sydney Sweeney, is going to be my most hyped movie of 2024, probably. Like,
that shit gonna be trash. I already know it.
Rom-coms are going to be back because Will Gluck could have saved the rom-com until they forced him to make Annie. Also, Glenn Powell has this action movie, Deputy X. It's a sci-fi thriller that's starring him. I think co-written or co-produced by Chris Morgan, who did all the Fast and Furious films. So that's kind of got my interest too. Glenn Powell's trying to ride that Top Gun Maverick momentum into
You trying
superstardom.
You trying to make people give a shit about this shit nobody gives shit about.
That's the show. Is no one cares about Jay White. No one cares
Nobody
about Orange Cassidy. No one cares about
the
Adam Cole, baby, who came back this week, and y'all were like, Adam Cole, he ain't even good.
No, punk ass, fake ass, baby face. Anyway, Jesus Christ. Shouts to anybody.
I don't know what we'll be talking about next week yet. I gotta figure that out.
We'll see. I will figure out what pops up. Again, it'll probably be Last of Us episode 1, but
we'll probably get back to a wrestler topic unless some big movie news that you are interested in comes out. But I want to see who's worthy of a spotlight. How I have been doing. Covered a lot of great wrestlers I've been a fan of. I could have done that PWG episode with Bola Bean this past weekend, but who knows?
You got to bring someone else for the Bola talk. My name is Khal, at Khal on Twitter, at Black Wrestling everywhere else. YouTube.com/Black Wrestling every Thursday, 8:35 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. We're giving you 5 mics of pro wrestling podcasts and excellence from a bunch of black people and this white guy. Patreon.com/Black Wrestling. If you're seeing this early, you're already tapped in. If you're not, you're watching it late. Tap in, pay the $1, pay the $10. You can watch this man talk about all types of white TV nonsense.
And it literally is the whitest television too.
This is the whitest shit. This is the whitest thing I have to sit through.
I think in 2023, I gotta live up to the name at this point. Like
I can't fucking wait.
So you're not a completist, right? You're not gonna have the urge to I gotta see how it pays off.
I'm not watching any episode of Copenhagen Cowboy ever again. I saw all I needed to with that show. Said I can't believe Drip made me watch this show, and I closed that tab in Netflix, went to something else. I'm good. Shout to something else.
That's what I'm saying. You didn't go to that, which is funny. Every time I say something else in a different context, I'm like, again, great branding by Lovely and Fan.
No pun intended. It's always no pun intended.
Well, that's what's funny. That was the funny part about No Bomb X White Noise is like someone had a good tweet like the other day that we're gonna underappreciate how good No Bomb X White Noise. I mean, how underappreciated White Noise the movie was. They didn't say White Noise movie, but they were talking about in the context of we're gonna forget like how good White Noise actually was. And I'm like, that's this show. In 10 years, it was like Drip was like these white stepped on prestige TV shows I love putting on. Justified's a great show. Shout out to the Oliphant. Yeah, like
you talking nonsense now. Thank y'all for rocking with us. We'll catch y'all next week. I promise.
You act like I wasn't a prophet about a certain guest on a certain show coming up. I didn't predict that shit. Come on,
Drip.
I'd be right.
Drip, shut up.
Sam said once, Drip be preaching.
Yeah.
No, he don't.
We'll catch y'all next week. Peace.
Yeah, absolutely, Rick.